Hi, welcome to the Craft Channel. My name's Corinne Bradd, and today I've got a project for you that you don't normally see a lot, and that is fabric wrist warmers. And you don't normally see it a lot because most of them are knitted or crocheted. These are made out of quilt weight cotton with wadding inside. You could make them out of stretch fabric. I have a bit of an aversion to sewing jersey fabric, so making these was actually quite a revelation. And the one thing you have to bear in mind is, as long as this indentation where your wrist goes is wide enough to fit your hand in, you can get it in quite easily, and there's a slight shape to it. Now, the pattern I'm going to provide is to fit my hands. I don't think I've got the biggest hands in the world. So what I would do is, there's a centre line here. If you need to enlarge or reduce it, what you need to do is cut your pattern in half and either pull it apart or squeeze it together. And if you're in any doubt, make yourself a muslin to check you can get your hand in there comfortably, because by the time you put the wadding in, it will come up a little bit smaller. I've designed it so you can get a pair of wrist warmers out of a fat quarter of fabric. This is actually out of 2 fat 8ths. And they are reversible. So you just need 2 pairs of right size together outers and 2 pairs of right size together inners. But I'm not going to use that fabric. I'm going to use this fabric here that I've made one from already. And to start with your outers, you want to back them with wadding, and then you just want to zigzag stitch all the way around the outside to hold it in place. So I've got a 3mm wide zigzag, which is 3mm long. And it doesn't have to be the most precise of stitching, because your seam allowance will cover this stitching in a minute. And this isn't a very necessary stitch, but it does just make your life easier because there's less pieces of fabric to shift around as you're working. So take your pins out, and if necessary, where your wadding has stretched a little bit, just trim away that excess so you can see where the edge of your fabric is. And I've used a synthetic wadding for these. My preference is normally like a decent cotton wadding, but the reason I've used this is because it's much easier to compress. And there's one slightly tricky bit on this. It's not massively tricky, but it's tricky enough. So take your wadding pair, take your lining pair, and what you need to do is pair up your inners and your outers right sides together. And there is a little mark on the pattern piece. You need to sew from the point to the little mark with a straight stitch. And one thing I forgot to mention, with my templates, I always do them so you can cut them out of card, draw around them onto your fabric, and then use that drawn line as your stitching guide. So when you cut it out, you need to add your seam allowance. I know that's not how most people do it, but I like to be different sometimes. And also sometimes, especially on things like this, you can be a lot more accurate with where you're sewing. So you've sewn what is this bit, your thumb hole, you need to open your pieces out and then match up those two seams. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew these fabrics, and it's easier to sew the unwadded piece first. So if you match up the top of that seam and fold these down out the way, and also match up the bottom of that seam, and again fold your padded pieces out of the way. I won't pin that too close to the seam. You can then stitch from the end of the seam to the end of the cuff. And this is the only tricky part of the project. If you find that you've missed the seam a little bit, the tricky thing is getting the work under your foot in the right place so that you're starting right at the top of the previous seam. And then if you get it on there, you can leave your needle in the fabric, trying to make sure that your fabric hasn't folded in on itself. I appear to be making a right hash of this, as is always the way when I'm being filmed. It's worth it, because they do make really neat little gauntlets that are good for dog walking, gardening, or even just sitting at home knitting. So once your needle is in the fabric at that join point, you can then lift the foot up and manipulate your fabric so it's straight, and just stitch 3 stitches forward. Oh, that's 3 more stitches forward, so I need to go 6 back to lock it, and then sew to the end of the seam. I'm going to try and show you on the other piece now how easy it is by starting from the other end of the seam. So again, make sure your seam is lined up. Pop a pin in there so you know where to stop. Try not to run that pin through the hard skin on the end of your finger. And this is why I've clipped these pieces, the other pieces of the gauntlet wrist warmer, out of the way, is so that you can see where your previous seam finished. If in doubt, stop before that seam, because if you end up with a gap in there, you can always hand stitch it. And the reason I sewed the unlined pieces first of all is because it's much easier to tuck them out of the way than it is to tuck the sewn together wadded pieces out of the way. So you've now got your butterfly, as it were. You've got these pieces sewn together. And then what you need to do is match up the other side of the lining and the outer and stitch all the way down that long seam. So that's the lining. And the outer. And then if you push the lining into the outer through the thumb hole, and then turn the outer out, you'll see you've got two right sides facing out pieces, and then you just want to push that lining back inside. So that, actually the easiest way to get this done properly is to put your hand in it and manipulate the fabric. So you've got your wrist warmer, and then when you turn it the other way round, it's still fully lined with no visible openings in the seam. But one of the drawbacks of making a project that's got another hole in it is you can't sew the ends right sides together and turn it out like you would normally. So what you need to do is you need to fold over about a 5mm seam allowance along the top edge of the lining. All the way round. And then making sure that you're matching up those seams. Fold down your outer inside and pin it so they match up. And this is the only drawback to this project, because I don't mind hand sewing at all. I hate hand sewing on camera because I feel I'm a little bit cack-handed. I'm very cack-handed at times. But then once that's pinned, you can grab yourself a needle and thread, and then very simply, and this is going to be really quick, just over sew the lining to the outer. Oh. Try not to get your thread tangled in your pins. Do you see now why I don't like hand sewing while I'm being filmed? So I'm just coming to the end of over sewing this thing. And if you can't be bothered to do it like this, what you could do is just tack this seam and then machine stitch around the outside of it, which I'm going to do anyway, just to give it a better finish. And let's just clip that off. And most sewing machines have got a removable accessory drawer, so you can use the machine bed to do sleeves. Now, with the best will in the world, you're never going to get this top of your wrist warmer over there. So if you leave it on the side if you leave it inside out, as it were, so the side where your stitching is going to be most noticeable is on the inside, and then you pop it in your machine inside out. I'm just going to increase the stitch length slightly. You can then just neaten the top of that cuff by just keep rolling the fabric forward as you work. Just going to cut those ends of thread off before I forget that they're there. You might just need to coax it over that seam. And that just neatens the top of the wrist warmer. Like so. And the bottom cuff is done in exactly the same way. You simply fold over both raw edges to the inside, and then you can finish it like so with a hand stitch plus a machine stitch, or just a tacking stitch and a machine stitch only. And then you've got a nice little pair of wrist warmers. And they're a snug fit, but they're not too tight. They're going to keep your wrist warm because it's that whole thing about trapping layers of air. So with a synthetic wadding like this, you've got a certain amount of a bounce to it, and it's keeping a certain amount of air in there quite warm. And then it's not restricting. You can still write with it, you can still knit with it, you can sew, you can walk the dog. But it's not often you get the opportunity to make something like that from what is essentially a non-stretch fabric. But again, as I say, if you go by my template, you will want to check that your hand will fit inside that narrowest wrist part quite easily with room to spare. And if your hand seems to be stretched out much further, make this wider in this from the middle out. And you can obviously make them longer, so if you want wrist warmers that go right up to your elbow, then just carry on the length of it. But these are designed to be made out of a fat quarter of fabric, So I hope you like that idea. I hope you're going to keep warm this winter. Please check our other videos. We've got lots of great ideas for stash busters, keeping warm, especially the quilts. I think we'll have lots of quilts in the home this year. I certainly will. Please subscribe so that we can let you know when we've got a new video coming up live. They're normally once a week, and we've got all kinds of disciplines. So if something's not your thing, you should be able to find something else there that you'll enjoy. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you soon. If you've been inspired to create, please share your makes with us in the comments section below. And if you've enjoyed videos by the Crafts channel, hit the like button. Want to see more of us? Then click subscribe. See you next time.